On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
I was just wanting to like make it so that if somebody were listening, they're listening out for characteristics, not so much like hearing the family structure, because then they'll be like, well, tell me what that is so I can be just like you, Anton, because that's essentially what they probably want to do.
Like I would never have a kid out of wedlock. I would never raise a kid out of wedlock. For me, that's creating the possibility, or it's a stronger possibility, that my kid will turn out worse than she would have been had she been raised in a two-parent household. That's part of having a successful marriage, is the ability to raise kids under a better environment.
Really? Arranged marriage. We're talking about leading up to marriage, and Amira says that it wasn't an arranged marriage, but I guess it's similar to a certain extent, but not all the way that way. Just arranged marriage in general. What are your thoughts about it? About approaching marriage in a different way?
I agree with Lauren in that we do see this in Western culture when you talk about different classes of family. Because as soon as we talked about this, I thought about Kushner, thought about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, right? And so we see it in that stratosphere. But there's community support, there's familiar.
What did they do, really? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. What did Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump do?
Got married?
No, I'm saying, was it like?
Oh, well, no. I'm just talking about because let me say this. My thought process on marriage, period. I know the big conversations around marriage being a business. I always say marriage is a covenant. It's an exchange of strengths for weaknesses. So when I look at it through that lens and I look at Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, you have this joining of two families. So
gotcha. All right, I got you. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, you have the Kushners coming together with the Trumps. So that's what I thought. That's what I think about. Even so much to the degree that Ivanka became, I forget, I don't want to butcher it, but whatever religious faith that Jared Kushner follows, she follows that as well. She went through the whole rites of passage to be a member of that community. Personally, so when we bring it back down and we talk about, the middle class family, I think in times past we've seen it then too. You've seen families that grew up together on the same block or had close proximity to each other. Quite often, the children in those families would wed, and it'll be a joining of those families. But I think the lower you go, and especially in today's time, I don't think the community, the village structure is there to support arranged marriages in our communities. I find it fascinating to hear Lauren talk about that she's open to it. Especially I view a lot of her content. I'm just like, man, I actually think that's dope. I think that's really, really dope that you're open to it. But I also agree with your point around having people being certified to vet the candidate, right? So I don't see in our community, honestly, I just don't see where arranged marriages will work like that. And Anton, I hear you talk. I think I've heard you talk a couple times about successful marriages. Define what a successful marriage is for me.
How would I define myself to be successfully married?
No.
I mean, I would use myself as an example and illustrate what makes my marriage successful because I'm successfully married.
No, I think, well, okay. I think on the caption of one of the videos.
JR crazy.
About a mirror. I'm not paying attention to JR, man. Get them shoes today, man.
What was your question?
A couple of videos on one of the videos surrounding Amira was talking about how she got married, and you defined that you think you captioned it. Amira talks about being successfully married, and that intrigued me because I don't think she's ever gave context behind what her marriage looks like. So I was curious to know, what do you define as a successful marriage?
I'm curious too. What is a successful marriage?
Okay, so like I said, I'll use myself as an example. A successful marriage is largely two people that closely aligns with whatever it is that they plan to do. So, for example, I'm the leader of my household, right? My chick is happily in a space where she is very much subscribed to the idea that this is a benevolent dictatorship, right? We lead, we are successful, we're successfully raising our daughter. They don't need for anything. I've been able to provide, and ultimately what that has led to is that my daughter and my wife are able to find themselves and fall into their femininity. They don't have to subject themselves to the same rigors that other women have to subject themselves to. I think that a lot of times when you see a lot of these other marriages, and I have to use a comparison or another marriage as a comparison in order to fully illustrate my point. I think a lot of times when you look at a lot of these other marriages, people endure through it. And that's why you see people a lot of times get divorced once the kids leave home and stuff like that. That's not the situation that I'm in. That's not the situation that I've seen my parents, my 7 uncles on my mother's side, my 2 on my father's side, all 3 of my brothers. They have all been successfully married, and what that has fostered is a lot of growth, a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of successful kids that has come in a lineage and also been able to be successful also. And we also champion all of the benefits that come along with marriage, both financially and understanding that kids that are raised in a 2-parent household are much more likely to be successful than kids that are born out of wedlock. And you have co-parenting situations. So success in a marriage extends just beyond the 2 people that are married. It goes into the kids. It goes into how you affect other people. It goes into whether or not my wife is able to live in her purpose instead of having to focus on providing for the household also and contributing to resources. It's a lot of things that successful marriages highlight that I think extend beyond, whatever religion that you're in or whatever race you are or whatever culture you are. I think that is largely defined by that. Does that paint the picture for you?
I think you explained the benefits of a successful marriage, but I was trying to piece it all together, and there were certain things that I picked out, okay, the woman has to be submissive to let the man lead, that's one. So I was more so for characteristics. So you talked about all the people in your family that have successful marriages, but if someone were listening, what are the characteristics or things that they should strive for? And I know
first they have to understand that marriage is a business more than it is love.
Okay.
So all of those things that I described come as a result of understanding what marriage is first. Most people think that marriage is a love thing, or a successful marriage is we got to go hold hands and walk through the park and all of that. And then are they present and so on and so forth. I don't define a success. Those are benefits of marriage, but that's not what defines a successful marriage. Largely people come together in order to build communities, in order to raise children, in order to create wealth, to create a power dynamic, and to keep keep things structured a certain type of way. And there's more to just marriage than whether or not you love somebody.
Right. Okay. I was just wanting to make it so that if somebody were listening, they're listening out for characteristics, not so much hearing the family structure, because then they'll be like, well, tell me what that is so I can be just like you, Anton, because that's essentially what they probably want to do.
I would never have a kid out of wedlock. I would never raise a kid out of wedlock. For me, that's creating the possibility, or it's a stronger possibility, that my kid will turn out worse than she would have been had she been raised in a 2-parent household. That's part of having a successful marriage, is the ability to raise kids under a better environment.